How about those old-fashioned revenge of the X movies when they are beating a dead horse, going back to the well, trying to make one more video, one more movie based on a successful series? That's me today. We're going to be talking about the flowing hair dollars or medals of 2024 because it's been about 6 months since that notorious auction in the middle of December of 2024. When those gold privy marked pieces sold at ridiculously high prices. Let's see if they've become a winner. Let's see if they've become a loser. Let's also take a look at some of the silver pieces. So that's what this video is going to be about. A 6-month update on the flowing hair controversy. If you are new to the channel, I'd like to thank you for being with me here today. My name is Dub C, and I'd love to encourage you to go ahead and click on the subscription button, become part of this community. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to a YouTube channel. It's really just a way of showing support. And if you're one of my returning subscribers, you guys are going to have to let me know down below. Are you tired of this? Do you never want to think about this again? Or is this still kind of an interesting topical thing to be talking about, to be learning about? I hadn't even really bothered to look at what prices have done in that 6 months, give or take, since these pieces were first released. So I wanted to take a dive into this and see what had happened and check my math, check my scores. Let's see if anything has happened interesting with these. Do you still feel that there's any controversy around these, or are you at peace with them? So the 2024 flowing hair controversy, a quick recap. The United States Mint issued a 2024 silver dollar, and I've got to put that in air quotes because it was never monetized. This is really technically a metal. And I talked a lot about the Mint's history with this kind of reissuing pieces. Some people don't like that concept to begin with. I happen to think there's a time and a place for it. And you've got some examples up here that I think are really neat. These are kind of the background for these, and I'll put a link down to the entire series I did about the flowing hair pieces as they were being released down below if you want to do a recap. There are about 4 videos in this series. Now there's going to be 5. So we're looking at the 2021 Morgan dollar re-releases. If you recall, Morgan dollars first issued in 1878, and they were reissued in 1921 after a 15-year hiatus. We needed to get back into producing silver dollars. So the last of the Morgan dollars released in 1921. It's interesting because the first of the peace dollars was also issued in 1921, a little bit later. So this is kind of an interesting year for American silver dollars. And in 2021, the United States Mint re-released Morgan dollars, now with a date of 2021. That's celebrating the last of the Morgan dollars. And also re-released the peace dollar. This is a 2021 peace dollar, celebrating the first of the 1921 peace dollars. Kind of an interesting thing to do. The Mint has a long history of reissuing pieces, kind of recreating pieces. And again, volume 1 of this series really takes a deep dive into that. I talk about lots of the different times that the United States has kind of reused these classic images and how significant that was. But I was always in favor of them doing this, the United States Mint, because I am a huge collector of the peace dollar, and especially the 1921 peace dollar. So the idea that the Mint would release 21 peace dollar in 2021, I thought was really cool. The interesting thing about the Morgan dollars is that I had spirited conversations, let's put it that way, online with some folks when these were getting ready to be released, and a lot of people didn't like this idea. And I maintained that these pieces would eventually become collected with the Morgan dollar series, the full Morgan dollar series. And likewise with the 21 peace dollar, I said the 2021 is going to be eventually collected with the whole peace dollar series. That's still a little bit up in the air. Some purists would argue that they are never going to include these new replica pieces with their original sets, but I think people have started to warm to them. And let me just show you the kind of cool thing about these. This is a 2021 Morgan, and I don't remember exactly which this one is. Let's take a look at the back. There is the privy mark, and you can see it right there. So this is a privy mark of, I believe this one is the New Orleans. And the interesting thing about the privy, man, I wish we could show that just a little bit closer, is that there you go. That's not a mint mark, right? That wasn't struck in New Orleans, but it was struck to kind of commemorate the idea of when Morgan dollars were struck in New Orleans. So they used a privy mark instead. I've done a deep dive into privy marks also. It's not really struck in New Orleans, but the way that they kind of use the privy mark up on the end, I thought was really kind of clever, because it really does look like an O privy mark or an O mint mark. And here we're looking at the Carson City. That's the Carson City, Nevada privy mark. You can see the CC down below. Again, not struck in Carson City. That mint no longer exists, but this is the 2021 new version of the Morgan dollar with that Carson City, Nevada privy mark. So we've got a long history of doing privy marks, and I thought these were kind of cool. The peace dollar struck in Philadelphia doesn't have a privy mark on it. And then the mint went and did something that was kind of unexpected. They struck a 2024 flowing hair dollar. Now, this is kind of controversial in the first place because these were never monetized. This is technically a metal. And you're looking at it here. And while I do feel like this is a beautifully struck, re-engineered, repackaged, whatever you want to call it, it's a reinterpretation of what the 1794 silver dollar would have looked like. I think the mint did a really nice job of it. This is just a really pretty coin. See, there I go again. It's not a coin. It was never monetized. This is essentially a metal. So let's bring it up to the current. What happened with the release of these? Why are these controversial in the first place? The 2024 flowing hair silver pieces, not monetized. They did a mintage of 75,000 pieces of these. Of those pieces, 1,794, that's celebrating the 1794 date of the originals, have a privy mark on them in the field right here that actually says 230, just 230. So that privy mark is celebrating the 230th anniversary of the silver dollar. It's kind of a weird thing to be celebrating, but I've talked about that before too. It's fine. I've come to grips with that. 230 doesn't seem like an appropriate time to be celebrating, but clearly the mint had its reasons. So of the mintage of these, of the 75,000 pieces of these that were minted, 1,794 had a 230 privy mark on them. Of that 1,794 pieces, 230 of them came with a signed certificate of authenticity from the director of the U.S. Mint, Ventress C. Gibson. So you can see these are kind of different levels of scarcity. We went with a population of 75,000 originally made. Of those, 1,794 have a 230 privy mark. And of those, 230 of them have this signed certificate of authenticity. Interesting. That's unusual. And some people had kind of a little bit of an issue with that because it was almost as if the mint was creating a rarity to begin with. But the thing that I liked about these, when they were first released, is that it was the luck of the draw, right? I believe that the U.S. Mint assigned a 2-piece maximum per household order when they first released these. It might have been 1, it might have been 2. And your luck of the draw was that if you bought one of these, and the original issue price of these was $104, you had a chance, a blind chance, nobody knew, of getting one of those pieces with the 230 privy mark of them, and one of those very few pieces, the 1,794 that come with the 230 privy mark. And one of those could be one of the 230 that does have the signed COA also. Luck of the draw. I like that idea. There's something kind of egalitarian, I've used that word before, something that kind of puts everybody together. You're going to buy one of these, you've got to get in the line, you've got to get in the queue on the Mint's website. You have to queue up at 12 o'clock noon Eastern time. I think that's when they went on sale. And if you were one of the people that made it through the process of entering all of your information and putting down your credit card number and all that kind of jive, you got one of these pieces, you had a chance of getting one of these scarce privy marks. It's kind of hokey, but it's also kind of fun. I think it adds an element of interest to these pieces, and I was all about it. I went ahead and got 2 of them, and if you remember the original videos, I still have my sealed version of this, and I call it Schrodinger's flowing hair. The piece that I opened, the one of the 2 pieces that I got, did not have the privy mark. It did not have the fancy COA. But I maintain that the other one that I've never opened has the privy mark, has the COA, and I'll continue to believe that until the day that I eventually open it, which I probably never will. So, I want to talk about where we are now with these, and we're going to look at where these pieces sold originally, and now we're going to look at where they are in terms of recent sales. Let's talk a little bit about the gold piece also. The 2024 flowing hair gold piece. Now, this is where the controversy really starts. They were monetized, and they were monetized at $1, which is kind of ridiculous. This is a very heavy, big American gold coin with a $1 face value. It had a mintage of 1,750 pieces, 17,500 pieces rather. Of them, 230 of them were privy marked. So you can see that this is already a much smaller mintage, 17,500 versus 75,000 of the silver pieces. Only 230 of them were privy marked. Now, the thing that makes the gold piece controversial is that this was not luck of the draw. It's already an expensive thing. When you're talking about a gold coin that with an ounce weight that is 9999 pure gold, I believe that was 4 nines fine. The issue price of these originally was not cheap. They were originally issued for $3,000 and then some, 3,000 and change. So the interesting thing about the privy marked pieces is that you didn't have a luck of the draw of getting one of those privy marked pieces if you plunked down your money for the gold piece. That was something that was controversial because all of the gold pieces with the privy mark, the U.S. Mint set them aside. They made these pieces, then they had PCGS grade them all ahead of time before they were even offered. And then they were sold exclusively through a private auction company. So there was no luck of the draw. There was no you plunk down your money and you take your chances. There was no I've had a subscription for years. I get first crack of these. There was no I'm going to open up 2 or 3 screens on my computer and try to get in line at the U.S. Mint like a lot of people do. Instead, this was exclusively offered through a private auction that happened in December of 2024. So there was much fanfare about these, and everybody knew about them in advance. It kind of takes away that element of surprise, that luck of the draw. And I think that that really kind of made me feel like this was the U.S. Mint advertising itself to the highest bidder out the door. And in my feelings, the U.S. Mint is really there to make pieces for the United States citizens, right? This is something that we should all have a crack at. And I guess if you want to say that we lined up at auction and everybody had a crack at buying these, that's kind of true. But the truth of the matter is that instead of that $3,500 plus retail price, these pieces were going to sell for a lot more than that, and we knew that was going to happen. So 230 of them sold through a private auction. Let's take a look at where these pieces are now compared to where they were originally. The silver, non-privy marked pieces, right? This was just your run-of-the-mill average pieces like the one that old Dub C has here. Originally sold for $104. Now on eBay, recent sales of these pieces, if you're talking about the ones that have no, that are not slabbed, they're just in the original government packaging. 2 examples sold recently, and we're looking at one of them here. Original government packaging 527. So this happened within a week of when I'm filming this. $289. That is well over 100% profit if I were to turn around and try to sell this on eBay. And of course, it does have all of its original packaging. You know, I'm a stickler for that kind of thing. These pieces selling for about $289. A nice little return on investment. Have no interest in selling it, but it's neat to see that these have gone up in value. Graded pieces, you're looking at a PCGS MS69 sold the same date for $250.50. Wow, interesting. A 69 actually sold for considerably less than just a regular raw piece in its original government packaging. I think that's kind of an interesting thing to note. The graded MS70 piece from CACG, that is Certified Acceptance Corporation's new grading service, has kind of a reputation of being more difficult to get a high grade in. They sold an MS70 on PCGS on 527 for $410. So a significant difference between a raw piece and an MS70 from CACG. Note that that PCGS actually sold for less than the raw piece. Interesting though, surprisingly though, On that same date, an MS-70 from NGC sold for $420, a little bit more than CAC-G. I would not have expected that. And that could just be an anomaly. This could be somebody who really likes NGC packaging and wants everything that they have to be in the same kind of slab. But it's interesting to note that an NGC piece sold for a little bit more than the CAC-G. I think these prices are about in line with what I expected. Maybe a little bit higher. I wasn't expecting the raw pieces to sell still at a premium. I thought that they would be very close to where the Mint had put them out at $104 a piece, going back to about 6 months ago. A little bit more than that for the silver pieces. Interesting. Silver privy marked pieces. This is where it really starts to get fascinating, and this is where it seems like the bang for your buck was really spot on. Remember that if you bought one of these pieces from the US Mint, you had the luck of the draw of getting these special privy marked pieces. So let's take a look at some of those. Privy slabs, ungraded OGP, let's start that way. If we're looking at the ungraded pieces in the original Mint packaging with the privy mark and signed COA, sold on April 1st for $9,119. Now, obviously, there's a little bit of discrepancy because I really wanted this to be a 6-month update, and some of these sales just haven't happened recently. But the most recent sale that I could clock on eBay, original government packaging with the privy mark and the signed certificate of authenticity, $9,000. That is a 10,000% profit off your $104 original price from the Mint. That's pretty phenomenal. So for you folks who got the signed certificate of authenticity and got the privy mark, kudos to you. That was really cool. I know that I still have one in the original package here that I haven't opened up, Schrodinger's Flowing Hair. But let's take a look at some of the pieces in slabs, maybe a little bit closer to reality. The privy mark in slabs, PCGS MS69 on May 21st sold for $4,699.99. Now, there is obviously the slabbing fee involved with this. You have to pay the shipping and handling. And incidentally, I did a video recently about should I get this coin slabbed. You can see in this case, it might have made sense. But then again, the original packaging piece sold for that much money. It's an interesting thing to think about. PCGS MS69, $46.99.99. NGC MS70 sold on May 20th for $64.98.99. A pretty big difference between a 69 and a 70. I think that's interesting too. $4,698.99. A CAC-G MS70 sold on May 20th for $6,578.90. So in this case, we see a slightly more premium paid for the CAC-G version of this COA, or rather the privy marked MS70 versus the NGC MS70. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. I know we're throwing a lot of grading services at you. The important thing to remember is that these pieces originally purchased from people who lined up and queued up and paid their $104, and now they're getting $6,000 for those special pieces that actually had the privy marked on them. I think that's really cool. I think that's where the Mint should have stopped with this. This was working. This is good. Is it too high? Are you one of a few people that can get one of these pieces with a privy mark? Can you afford to drop $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on a modern produced Mint piece? There's a controversy there, right? That's still open to debate. But the fact of the matter is that there is no denying, if you bought one of these from the Mint and you had a chance of getting a privy marked piece, you scored a home run and then some for your $104. So if you still have one of these, do you think the price is going to continue to go up? Is it going to drop? Interesting. We'll talk about that a little bit later too. Now let's talk about the gold. And the gold is what is really kind of the controversy that I was talking about. The fact that only the people who lined up and paid huge premiums for these pieces that were just minted, just released, the Mint knew that they were creating a modern rarity, not just a scarcity. This is a rare coin. The Mint was producing these and only selling them to the highest bidder. Again, that's a little bit controversial in my eyes. Let me know what you think about that. Originally issued for $38.40, right? So this is the original issue price of these pieces. You're looking at the Mint's original sale, and even these were kind of hard to get your hands on. In the original government packaging with no privy mark, May 22nd sold for $48.99.99. So you paid $38.40 and they're selling for $48.49. about $1,000 increase, right? Give or take. If you did not get one of these privy marked pieces, this was just the run of the mill of the gold pieces without a privy mark. Slabbed, no privy marked pieces. NGC proof 69. Remember, these are technically proof versus the silver pieces. Sold on the 24th of May for $48.49. Interesting, that's right about the same price that we're talking about. PCGS proof 70 May 26 sold for $67.50. So the difference between an NGC 69 and a PCGS proof 70, you're talking about close to $2,000. So clearly there is a premium for the 70s on these series. Some people say that an NGC 70 is not as good as a proof as a PCGS, or a PCGS is not as good as a CAC-G. I'm trying to cut that out of this conversation. We're just looking at these actual sales that have happened recently, right? We're celebrating the 6-month anniversary of this whole controversy. But now we'll talk about the pieces with a privy mark. So these pieces originally sold without the privy mark for $3,800, $3,840, and now they're selling for between $4,800 and $6,800. A nice increase on your investment if you had that kind of money to drop. Only 230 of the gold pieces originally made with those privy marks. Remember, these were all graded ahead of time by PCGS before anybody saw them. And they were only offered through the private company of Stack's Bowers. I have no problem with Stack's. I like Stack's as a company. It's the Mint's decision to do this that I have a question with. So, intentional scarcity, only available through a private auction, already pre-slabbed by PCGS. There was no luck of the draw. There was no queuing up in line. This was sold to the highest bidder. So let's take a look at the original results of this auction that happened December 12th of 2024. And they were auctioned off in order. So these were numbered 1 through 230. All of them sold through Stack's Bowers. Remember that the original number 1 was also sold with canceled dies that actually struck this piece, in addition to a lot of other ephemera that was kind of included along with it, a fancy box and a whole bunch of other stuff. Proof 1, number 1, proof 70, sold with the canceled dies for $440,000. That was number 1, right? Number 2 was a 69, a proof 69, and it sold for $28,000. Number 3 was also a 69, and it sold for $28,000. Number 4 was a proof 70, and it sold for $46,000. So it seems like the people with deep pockets, lots of dealers, but probably also a few collectors that had deep pockets, we're definitely assigning a higher value to the higher grade piece, not so much the earlier minted piece. So in other words, number 2, ever sold, ever minted, theoretically, sold for $28,000, but number 4, that was actually a little bit higher in grade, sold for $46,000. The problem with looking at sales results for these pieces 6 months on is that their velocity has slowed quite a bit. Right after these pieces were sold, they were being auctioned on eBay, or sold on eBay, offered on eBay. And I'm talking literally within a few hours of the sale concluding on December 12th of 2024. I believe that's right? December 12th. Right after these sold, right after the auctions were concluded, these were listed on eBay. People were trying to flip them for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 a piece. So we've got a lot fewer sales that we can really gauge where things are now. But number 153 sold recently. Remember, these were offered in order from 1 to 230, and we know each one of these has their serial number listed on the PCGS slab. Number 153 sold on December 12th for $26,000. You're looking at the auction conclusion there from Stack's Bowers. Number 153 sold on March 18th of this year for $38,500. So the increase versus the silver privy marked pieces in terms of percentage is nowhere near as much. Remember, we said if you got one of those original government package privy marked silver pieces with the silver with the COA, they sold for $9,000 and change. That's a 10,000% increase. In this case, it's about a 50% increase. So the percentage isn't anywhere near as much, but man, those dollar figures are up there, right? Somebody paid $26,000 for this in the original sale in December. And just recently, the end of March, middle of March of this year, it sold for $38,500. So 6 months on, this is what we're looking at. What are your thoughts? I'd like to know your thoughts about this. First off, should I do a year update on these two in another 6 months? If I don't shoot a video, I will definitely be poking around just because I think it's a fascinating thing to watch. Am I blowing this out of proportion? Is this no big deal? People with deep pockets are always able to get cool things that the rest of us can't really afford, and that's just the nature of things. But offered by the US Mint, it really seems like everybody should have had an opportunity to get these pieces. I like the luck of the draw included with the silver pieces. I think that's the way to have done it. I don't know that I would have plunked down the $3,800 for the gold piece originally anyway. I certainly didn't do that. But maybe if there was a chance of not just getting a beautiful gold coin, but getting one that had the privy mark also, maybe it would have increased my desire to get one of these. And as it is, I was shut out. I wasn't going to pay $25,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $400,000 like that number one sold for. Let me know what your thoughts are about it. Did you buy any of these pieces when they were originally issued? Did you keep them? Do you still have them now? Did you sell them? Even the silver piece. Do you still have a silver piece that you're not going to open up because you want to believe that it's got the privy mark? I know everybody texts me and says, open up that piece. I'm not going to do that. Come on now. Do you think the sale was fair? Am I blowing this out of proportion? Is this just the way, the nature of the world, or does this seem not quite right to you? I'd like to know your opinion about it. I want to reiterate that I like Stack's Bowers as an auction company. I've used them before. They do a fantastic job. They've got some amazing experts on their panels. This thing offered through the U.S. Mint, I think, was the U.S. Mint's decision, and that's what I have an issue with. Would it have been fair? This is an interesting question. Would this have been fair if the prices had plummeted? What if those folks who had shelled out $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 at the original Stack's Bowers auction had seen the prices plummet to close to what their original issue price was, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000? Would it still be seen as unfair, at least in my eyes, if those prices had dropped instead of increasing? I don't know. It's a controversial topic. It's one that I think we can talk about for a long time to come. It is fascinating in how these fit in with the Mint's idea of re-releasing these classic designs. They do have more on the horizon. So are we going to see this same type of controversy happen again? I don't know, but you can bet that if it's interesting enough, I'll shoot a video about it. If you have questions or comments about anything that we talked about here, I'd love to hear your comments about this 6 months after the fact. Let's keep this conversation going. If you have these pieces, if you've sold these pieces, did you make a profit on them? Do you keep them? Are you going to hold on to them for a long time? I'd love to know about that. If you have any suggestions about other videos you'd like to see me make, whether it deals with coins or precious metals, definitely leave that comment down below. Love to hear those comments. And again, I have released a series of videos called Subscriber Question and Answer. So if you leave a question that requires a little bit of a deeper dive, I might just make a video specifically about your question, and I will tag you in it. You'll have your own video up on the internet. I think that's kind of cool. I try to premiere videos every Friday evening. In fact, you might be watching this video with me on a Friday night. If you are, say hi, type it in the fields off to the right. If you have never joined me for a live stream after one of these premieres, join me for the premiere. Keep your schedule open for Friday evenings. Definitely click on the notification button on my YouTube page because it will tell you when we have videos coming up. And I'm almost always there for the premiere of the videos to chat with you while the video is playing for the first time. But then we often go live immediately afterwards to have a deeper dive, a more fun, fast-paced conversation with you and everybody else in the community. I look forward to those. It's a great way to start the weekend. Join me on a Friday night if you've never done it before. It's a blast. Always be learning. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.